Hello again, this is Preheat. Welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. So this is the last in the Mage series for Midnight, and we're just going to kind of give you a crash course on how Arcane Mage works in Midnight, and I'm also going to give you some predictions for what I think will be meta based on the current tuning. Keep in mind, this is alpha. Things are for sure going to change, and there's definitely an Arcane build that we'll get to in just a minute. It is so strong that I doubt anything will match it. So yeah, this is not going to stick around. But I want to give you an idea of how this whole thing works so that you can understand why it works and what Arcane is looking like in this expansion. So as you may or may not know, Arcane Mage is a spec that receives a lot of slander. People talk about how it's too complicated, how you have to have a PhD to play it. But Arcane wasn't always that way. In fact, Arcane Mage was once the spec that was known for being the simplest because you were just casting a bunch of Arcane Blasts. What Midnight proposes to do is to bring Arcane back to that level of simplicity. Maybe not quite just spamming Arcane Blast, but we're getting very close to that. So in part, this is done by changing the talents themselves. So right now on live, Arcane has a bunch of different modifiers that increase your barrage damage. You've got your Arcane Charges, you've got your Nether Precision, you've got Intuition, you've got Glorious Incandescence, you've got Brilliant Power, you've got your Harmony stacks, you've got Execute, you've got Arcane Debilitation. I mean, the list just goes on and on, but Blizzard has basically condensed this all into a buff called Arcane Salvo. And Arcane Salvo has some tie-ins. So whenever you have Arcane Salvo and you pick the Orb Barrage talent based on the amount of salvo that you have, which it caps out at 20, you have a chance to fire out an orb. Arcane Salvo also gives us a refund with the Spell Slinger talent. So whenever we have 20 salvo, we get a 5 charge refund. A lot of incentives here for us to be at max salvo. So the question is, how do we get the salvo? Well, Arcane Salvo is given to us by various abilities, right? I think that missiles is one way that Blizzard intends for us to get it. There is even a talent here that says that each wave is going to grant us 1 stack of Arcane Salvo. But the thing is this talent is very, very costly because we have to put 2 points into Eureka, which is a 20% damage increase on clear casting. Now, here's where I see problem number 1. Why would I take a 20% increase on just clear casting when I could instead take Prodigious Savant and increase all of my damage by essentially 80%, or put 2 talents over here and increase my damage by 120%. Yeah, something is up with these modifiers, but we'll get to that in just a little bit. Anyways, moving down, we do have some changes. So Evocation is now a choice node, and it is a choice with a very, very strong talent. I definitely think there's a case where you might play Evocation, but right now I've just been running Mana Adept, because I like using Barrage and I like using Orbs, and this just synergizes much better. Gives me all the mana that I need. Now, in addition to that, we also have some light changes, like Arcane Tempo is no longer something that stacks. It's just a flat 2% haste. They've also removed the component of Evocation where it gives you a damage increase with Siphon Power, so now it's just mana return. They've also given us a new talent with Arcane Pulse. This is a pretty cool looking talent. It does like this big circle, so whenever you see this ability, it kind of flashbangs me on my camera, so it's usually pretty easy to tell when this is going off. But it's a very, very long cast, and it's a spender. So think AoE Arcane Blast that generates charges and also deals a ton of damage and costs a ton of mana. We don't really need that though, because why would we cast this ability when we can just cast more barrages and more orbs? A lot of this is kind of the same as you remember it. So Arcane Surge is essentially the same ability, same with Arcane Orb, although it does seem to be doing a lot more damage than I'm remembering. Also, Touch of the Magi has a new icon, and what's really cool is our Apex talent, Touch of the Archmage. This talent makes it so our Touch of the Magi is stronger, and also we get a pulse damage afterwards that's AoE, and we also get a second charge. The second charge of Touch of the Magi is huge because Touch of the Magi has a 45-second cooldown, which is, as you know, half of 1.5 minutes, right? So this basically makes it so that during Arcane Surge, we can either choose to touch 2 different targets, or we can apply our touch right away in Surge and then follow up with a second touch that's a little bit weaker. Or in the case of Sun Fury, because we still do have Arcane Soul, which would follow our Arcane Surge, where we get to Barrage Mash, right? We could save a touch for that and use the touch once we go into Arcane Soul. So this is a great change, and I love the fact that we have 2 Touch of the Magi's. You can actually cut your Touch of the Magi short on the target, and it just makes it instantly pop, basically, and it begins the second touch. But Touch of the Magi also generates clear casting, so this is a way to get a clear casting in a pinch, although we're probably going to want to just line this up with our cooldowns. So the engine to this whole thing is Orb Mastery. So as you know, Spellslinger loves Arcane Orb, and Orb loves Spellslinger, right? We have a way to generate splinters with this very, very efficiently. Every time we throw out an orb, we're getting splinters, and it is AoE, right? Every orb can give us up to 4 splinters. So here we have a way to generate splinters very easily. Whenever we use our orb, we can get up to 4 splinters. Whenever those orbs go out, the splinters are also reducing the cooldown on orb. These splinters are then giving us clear casting procs, which are then giving us even more splinters. And then also we have arcane splinters have a chance to give us an arcane salvo. And we have arcane barraging at 20 stacks refunds 5 salvo, so we're getting refunds on that. And then of course for our salvo charges, whenever we barrage, we have a chance to fire out an orb. So there's kind of like a feedback loop here. We are getting refunds out the wazoo, and this allows us to cast a ton of orbs. So yeah, essentially the idea with this build is just use your cooldown, use Touch of the Magi, barrage, and then use your orb. It's going to fire out 3 orbs, so even in single target, it's going to bring you back to 4 charges. And then you can, get to 20 salvo, barrage again, use your orb again with clear casting ideally, and then just kind of rinse, repeat. You do not have to use arcane missiles as this build. Orb mastery is a straight up replacement for arcane missiles. So this build is pretty good in single target, but as you can probably expect, it also does a lot of damage in AoE as well because of all these orbs and all these splinters. So I went ahead and did some dummy tests, and this is single target, and as you can see, Arcane Splinters is just doing a crazy amount of our damage, right? And this is breaking down into different facets of Arcane Splinters, so it's not just one damage source, but since it's all being grouped together, you can see it's doing 27.48% of our damage. Over a fourth of our damage is just the Splinters. And then obviously we have Arcane Barrage and Touch of the Archmage, which is very, very powerful. And then Splinter Storm, which you could also consider as Splendor damage, right? And then obviously going down the list, we do have some Arcane Blast and Arcane Orb damage. But remember, this is just single target. The damage profile is also nice and spiky. We do have some considerable bursts here on the pole. As you can see with the Surge and the Touch of the Magi's, it's going to go pretty high up here. It's peaking at 100k DPS, which is kind of crazy given the fact that we just did a number squish with this expansion, and then a bit of a lull here, and then a lot of burst damage. So yes, Arcane is very, very bursty still. Let's take a look at AoE now. All right, so here's the AoE sample, and as you can see, we are already peaking at almost 450k DPS in our Bloodlust on the pole, so very, very strong. Now this is just like the first draft of what I understand the rotation should be, so there might be some optimizations, but it also might just be that simple. And as you can see, Splinter damage is doing 42% of our damage. This is just crazy, but the thing is like the orbs are the engine for the Splinter. Like even though orb may not be our highest damaging spell, it is in fact our highest damaging spell because it is the reason why we have these Splinters, right? We're not getting to this Splinter number or anywhere near it unless we have the orbs powering the engines. Let's take a look at the burst. So just the first 30 seconds here, once we kind of enter our cooldowns, as you can see, Splinters is doing a ton of work here, and Barrage is also hitting kind of hard as well, right? But lots of damage events. I mean, if we break this down and look at the actual damage events, you're just going to see damage kind of bouncing off the walls here. If we look at specifically the damage on Barrage, you can see Barrage is no slouch. I mean, it's critting for 52k here. We have a 64k crit here, 65k crit here, right? It is definitely a spell that hits fairly hard. So yes, Arcane AoE, hypermobile, huge damage, great in single target, great in AoE. You don't have to cast missiles. You don't have to cast evocation. You pretty much just cast barrage and orb. Will this survive? Pretty much a 0% chance. I'll be honest with you. I don't think this is making it anywhere close to even beta, but it'd be cool if it did. I enjoy it. I mean, it's simple enough. I'm not going to speculate how they're going to nerf it, but I think it's pretty obvious based on what you're seeing here. But despite its simplicity, it is actually fun to play, and you really have to marvel at the spectacle of it all. Get ready, it's going to blow! Here we go! All right, and that's going to do it for this Arcane video. Now, there are other talents in here that I didn't cover that are a little out there, some weird concepts in the talents that I'm not sure if Blizzard is fully cooked yet, but we'll have to wait and see what ends up being in the final recipe. Stuff like missiles, spending your arcane charges, stuff like increasing your mana costs or using evocation to get your mana back. Playing High Voltage, playing Sun Fury. These are all things I tested and they just didn't end up really being as good as Spellslinger. But make sure you check out my other mage videos. They're going to be over here. It's going to be the Fire Mage and the Frost Mage videos. Give those a look because they are a lot different than what you're probably expecting, especially Frost. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell. And hopefully I see you in the next one.